everyone again to AGT's live parenting workshop. I am Darvin, AGT Psychologist Consultant, and I would like to welcome all of you to today's session, which is titled Raising Resilient Kids, Empowering Your Child to Face Life's Challenges. So we'll be talking about resilience and how you can build resilience in your child to help them face challenges in life. So every parent hopes that their child grows up to be strong, capable, and able to handle like life's ups and downs. I'm sure that's true for all of us. But life is full of challenges, and children are going to be facing these difficulties as they grow older. And the question is, how do we help our children develop the resilience, which is the ability to bounce back from setbacks and navigate difficulties effectively? So today we'll explore how resilience is developed, and I'll also share with you some practical ways that you can foster it in your child. So here are just a few things that we'll cover. What is resilience and why it's important? Secondly, what are some factors that affect resilience in children? And thirdly, some practical strategies that you can use to build your child's resilience. All right, so we'll be just going through these three main aspects. But let's just start with maybe a fundamental question that all of us can think about, which is what is resilience and why is it important? So it's basically the ability to bounce back from difficulties and setbacks that one faces in life and to maintain their effort and their actions towards reaching their goals. All right. So now that we know what resilience is, let's just take a look at some statistics that are quite eye-opening, to be honest. So, firstly, according to the American Psychological Association, 1 in 3 adolescents actually report feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or unable to cope with stress. And even in Malaysia, a study by the Ministry of Health in 2022 actually found that over 420,000 children experience mental health challenges like stress and low coping ability when they face difficulties. And thirdly, a UK study actually found that children with low resilience are 4 times more likely to experience academic struggles and emotional burnout. So these are obviously some really worrying statistics. I think you could say that, and they actually reflect like a growing urgency for parents and even schools and communities to really do something about how you can boost the resilience of children these days. Definitely, children have various different ways of dealing with challenges and how they face difficulties. And some children, they're more wired to maybe keep trying and keep being persistent and keep going when faced with challenges. So the thing about resilience is that it's not just about mental strength. It's about equipping the children with the emotional skills to survive and to really thrive when they face challenges. And the best part is, resilience is not something that you're just born with. You can actually nurture it and develop it through everyday experiences. And you, as parents, I think you're in the best place to really play a crucial role in shaping how your child actually learns to cope with our lives ups and downs. So these are some ways we'll discuss. There's some practical ways we can actually discuss, and I'll share with you how you can implement ways to build resilience in your children in everyday life. Okay, so now we'll talk a bit about the factors that affect resilience in children. So there are actually several factors that influence a child's ability to develop resilience. And these factors can either like strengthen or even and sometimes hinder their ability to bounce back from challenges. So we'll start with strong parent-child relationships. Of course, your parents, you are the main figures in your child's lives at the start of their lives, and you have strong influence in the environment they grow up in and the personality characteristics that they develop. So children who have supportive and loving relationships with their parents or caregivers, they actually tend to be more resilient. So they feel safe and they feel valued, and this gives them a really solid foundation to really face challenges and keep going at their goals. So parenting style also determines like a child's social skills, like their confidence as well as their resilience as well. So it's important to really assess like what sort of parenting style you're implementing and how this can affect your child. And another factor is actually the positive role models and social support. So this is also related to your role as parents, like whether children have positive influences. It could be family members like you, or your siblings, or the extended family members, your grandparents, uncles, aunties, even cousins, or even outside the family, like teachers or even friends. So having all these influences, it actually helps children learn healthy coping strategies, and it provides them with emotional support during tough times. So it's kind of important to also assess like who your children are growing up among and how they're influencing a child's resilience and ability to cope with challenges. And thirdly, emotional regulation skills are also very important. So resilient children, they can easily identify and express and manage their emotions in a healthy way. So it's important to teach kids how to handle things like frustration, disappointment, and stress. So they can actually navigate life's ups and downs in a more effective and more helpful manner. So these are just some factors that can affect the resilience in children for you to take note of. And now we'll go into the most important part, which is the practical strategies that you can use to build resilience in your child. And these are just some simple yet powerful strategies that you can use right away. So one way to do it is to actually normalize failure and teach a growth mindset. So sometimes kids tend to see failure as something to be ashamed of. But what if they saw it as like a stepping stone to succeed instead? So this is where the growth mindset comes in. So I'm not sure if anyone has heard of growth mindset. It's actually quite a popular concept in psychology. So growth mindset is actually a belief that we can improve our skills and our knowledge through hard work and determination, as opposed to feeling that it's fixed and innate. So we might feel that we can't change the things or our personality or the things that affect us or the way we are. But if we actually adopted a growth mindset, we can actually see it from a different perspective and we can try to improve. So instilling this mindset in your children is actually a great way to help them develop a positive frame of mind and thrive even better in the case of challenges. So what can you do to instill this growth mindset in your children? One way is to actually, for example, when your child is struggling with a certain task, so instead of saying something like, it's okay, maybe this isn't for you to do, and you can just like stop doing it, you can instead try to say, I see you're finding this tough, but every challenge is an opportunity to learn and improve. So why don't we figure this out together? So in doing this, you're actually encouraging them to maintain their effort and to keep trying until they reach their goals or their objectives. And that will give them the belief that as long as they keep trying, they can still succeed. So that's one way you can instill the growth mindset in your children. And another way is to actually share your own failures. So when you share your own failures to your children, like maybe a time that you made a mistake or you failed when you're trying to do something, but then you kept growing and you kept trying to improve, that will give them the perspective that as long as I keep trying as well, then maybe one day I can actually achieve what I set out to achieve. And if they see you as a role model, so we talked about the positive influence and a role model that you can be for your child, then they'll see how you behave and try to behave in a similar way as well. So if you share and if you try to be vulnerable with your child about your experiences with failure, they can also learn something from it as well. And that's one another way to do it. And besides that, you can also show them how you navigate a challenging task at home. So something simple like fixing something at home or moving heavy furniture. Like these are all, I guess, would say simple tasks, but it does take a little bit of effort. And if you maintain a positive attitude while doing this, instead of like maybe finding it difficult and expressing your frustration, then they'll also look at that and they'll see that, you are putting in all this effort and you are showing the resilience. And this will drive them to demonstrate the same behavior when they are facing challenges of their own. And the same concept of being a role model to your child, basically. And lastly, try to praise their efforts, not just the results. So when you're doing something difficult and you can see that they're struggling with it, try not to just talk about the results, whether they do well at it or whether they do badly at it, but you try to praise the effort that they're putting in because the process is important as much as the result. So instead of saying something like, you're so smart, you could say, I love how you kept trying, even though it was really tough. So when you praise the effort that they put in, it'll give the child the feeling that, the effort they're putting in, that's very valuable and that's meaningful. And the more that they see the effort as meaningful, the more they want to do it in the future as well, to maintain the effort and be persistent with the effort. And it's something that they can take with them in future challenges. All right. So that's the first strategy that I would like to share with you, just to normalize failure and teach a growth mindset. And there's actually another strategy as well, which is to let them struggle, but just a little bit. These are, of course, different ways, different approaches to parenting. But generally, what science says and what behavioral scientists can say is that of course, it's tempting to just solve every problem for our kids. But maybe that's not the best way to build resilience. You can actually build resilience better for your children through experience, by letting them experience difficulties and by giving them the space to really try to figure things out on their own, like try to find ways that they can solve their own problems. And that will definitely benefit them for the future. Because a bit of struggle is necessary to really teach your kids again the value of effort and the value of taking responsibility for their own struggles, as well as putting in the hard work to really improve and really learn how to solve their own problems. So, as we talk a bit more about the science, there's actually a concept called neuroplasticity. And this is related to the brain's capacity to adapt by creating new connections and pathways when we do like unfamiliar or difficult things. So over time, as we consistently perform like a difficult activity or a challenge, the brain actually adjusts, it changes like shape, and we get better at facing a challenge. So when we do more hard things, it can actually improve neuroplasticity as well as our cognition. So our ability to think, our ability to make decisions, and eventually our ability to solve problems as well. So basically, the bottom line is challenges lead to struggle, and struggle leads to learning and growth. And this is incredibly important for children at their young age. So keep on developing like a child's like, persistence and their ability to focus, and even their determination to succeed. This by encouraging a bit of struggle. So we should let them maybe try to struggle a little bit and try to figure things out first before you step in and try to help them. So what are some more specific practical ways that you can do this? So let's take a look. One example is that, say, if they're doing a puzzle or a difficult task, like homework-related task. So instead of like just giving them the answer or doing it for them, you can instead give them like prompting questions or guiding questions. Like you could ask them, "What do you think you could try next? What can I do next?" And that will give them sort of like a starting point to really think about what solutions they can use and what strategies to implement to solve the problem. So that's one way you could do it. And speaking of solving problems, you can encourage problem solving by letting them make like small decisions in everyday life. Like it could be planning their day, or for a weekend, or for school, or even deciding like how to save money, or to buy something that they like, or even like resolving a minor conflict with a sibling. So these are just some common everyday problems that we go through, and children also go through. So if you encourage them to learn ways to solve their own problems, you'll give them enough practice and enough experience to really build up their resilience and to find ways to overcome their own challenges. And thirdly, if you're a teenager, if you're a bit older, bit of an older child, if they're struggling to balance between like schoolwork and then you've got extracurricular activities as well, and then the social life to deal with, so they have all of these different things to really consider in their lives. Try not to micromanage the schedule. Try not to decide for them like, what they should do and how they should do it. Instead, you can actually let them experiment with their own like time management schedules and really figure out like how do they manage all their responsibilities and their tasks and different aspects of their life. So sometimes you'll see that some kids they like procrastinate and they really deal with a lot of last minute work and that'll give them a lot of stress. So again, as we go back to the previous strategy of let them struggle a little bit, let them figure it out on their own. Like how do they overcome this procrastination habit and how do they deal with the stress that comes with it? And that experience will actually teach them to plan a bit better next time. So these are just some ways that you can, step back a little bit and try not to intervene too much and let children learn on their own how they can come up with their own solutions and build resilience for themselves. So that was about letting them struggle a little bit. And next one, let's talk about help them label and manage emotions. So of course, emotions is an important aspect of resilience. It's about how can you manage your frustrations and your anger and your sadness when you're facing something difficult and how do you overcome it and how do you learn from it. Obviously, helping your kids understand and manage their emotions it's an important part of your life for them, but it can feel a bit challenging. They're more prone to outbursts and maybe they're more prone to worrying and some negative emotions. But there are definitely some ways that you can help them navigate all these intense emotions and get back on track as well. So here are some ways that you can do that. Like for example, if your child is upset, like try to validate their emotions before you jump to solutions. So instead of saying, don't cry, it's not a big deal, instead of dismissing them that way and, not paying attention to the emotions, you can actually learn to acknowledge the emotions instead. So you could say something like, okay, I see this is really like frustrating for you. And do you want to talk about it? Like, do you want to share how you're feeling and how it's affecting you? So, you're acknowledging the emotions and you're helping them label the emotion and that will make them feel seen and heard. And that's one way that you can actually teach your child to understand what they're going through on an emotional level. And next, teach them to identify emotions like frustration, anger, and sadness by expressing their feelings. So you can ask them open-ended questions, like similarly from the point before, like how are you feeling, or what's making you sad. So, if you ask them this kind of open-ended questions, you can help them really think about, how to express their feelings and think about what they're going through on a deeper level. So give them a sense of control over their emotions and help them manage their emotions better. Instead of like, letting their emotions run wild and engaging in outbursts and getting aggressive and shouting and really making a lot of fuss. If you teach them to label their emotions and understand their emotions, they can take control of their emotions and learn to manage them better. And aside from that, you can also teach them like calming strategies, like mindfulness techniques, or like deep breathing, or journaling, or even taking a short break when they feel overwhelmed. So these are just some ways that, when they're feeling really intense, when the emotions get really intense. So these are ways for them to calm down and really ground themselves and bring themselves back to a normal level. And this can definitely help them control their emotions and not to build the sort of inner strength that they can develop. And lastly, try to model emotional regulation as well. So again, similarly to the previous points of being a role model and a positive influence to your child, if you show that you're the kind of parent or you're the kind of person who can regulate their emotions and control your emotions, then you're more likely to see that your child will also do the same because you're the main point of reference for them. And they'll definitely learn a lot from how you behave around them. So maybe one example of this is like if you make a mistake while you're cooking, for example, you might say that, okay, oh, this didn't go as planned, but it's all right, I'll try again. I can always do it again. So you're not like getting really frustrated, you're not like getting so angry about what you just did, but instead you're kind of telling yourself and you're also kind of showing to your child that I can do it again, I can keep trying. So that builds up persistence and the resilience that you're trying to really instill in a child. So these are just some ways that you can teach your child how to like to regulate their emotions and really control like how they express their emotions and how they deal with their emotions as well. And lastly, encourage reflection and learning from challenges. So we talked about growth mindset before, where instead of feeling that whatever personality type or whatever behavior that you currently have, like you can always improve on them. You can always get better. So similarly, you want them to actually learn from past experiences and really reflect on what they did before and how they can learn from that. So kids who are resilient, they don't just like bounce back from difficulties. They learn from difficulties. And it's important that you have the child reflect on how they handle like challenges in the past. And that can actually build their self-awareness and their confidence to do better in the future and overcome and avoid and overcome future obstacles. So, some ways that you can actually do this is like ask reflective questions. Like if a child went through something difficult, like a difficult project at school or a difficult exam, you can ask something like, what's the hardest part for you? Or what do you do that help? What do you try that help? Or if you face a similar challenge again, like what will you do differently? So this encourages them to really think about what they went through, the difficult experience they went through, and really try to be aware of how they learn from it or what they learn from it and the things that they did that really helped them. And they'll definitely give them like a really good starting point to improve for future similar experiences that challenge them. And aside from reflective questions, you can also encourage them to keep an accomplishment journal. Like just ask them to write down like or even draw like things like what they did when they faced challenge and how they overcame the challenge, even if it's a big one or a small one, and what they learned from the experience. So if they're able to record down the whole process of facing the challenge, what they tried, and whether it worked, and what helped them overcome the challenge, this will also give them like a physical reference for them to look back on for future challenges. And thirdly, remember to highlight past successes. So if they're feeling stuck, like try to remind them as well, like previous times that they successfully handled difficulties. So if you give them sort of like a word of affirmation and to encourage them, to really motivate them, like give them the feeling that, I've done this before and I have someone to support me and I can definitely do it again. So you could say something like, remember when you were nervous for your presentation before, but you kept practicing and you did great? What helped you then? And do you think that, if you did the same things, you could actually benefit from it in the future and you could do it again? So giving this sort of encouragement, this motivation, will definitely be very useful for them as they work through more challenges and more difficulties in the future. Right. So when children recognize their own growth, they become more confident in their ability to face like every challenge that comes to them. So that covers it for point of encouraging reflection and learning from challenges. Okay, so those are just some strategies, some practical strategies that I've just shared to you parents that you can use to implement in daily life to really help your child build resilience and to become more persistent in overcoming challenges and to really build that self confidence as well to be able to face any challenge that falls at their feet. So that kind of sums it up in terms of resilience and what you can do to build resilience in your child. And I'll just go to the final conclusion about what we shared today. So do remember that resilience is not built in a day. It's something that, works through small everyday experiences and the way that you respond to your child's struggles, like the conversations you have with them, and the mindset that you try to encourage in them. They all really shape the way that, they face life's inevitable challenges. So by normalizing setbacks, by encouraging independence and teaching them how to regulate emotions, as well as revisiting like past successes, you're giving a child a really powerful gift, which is the ability to face challenges with confidence, with the ability to adapt, as well as the inner strength to really overcome setbacks and keep going. And that's really the core of resilience.